Hey, brothers and sisters. Well, I hope everybody had a good Christmas. And um, I know for a lot of people that we're thinking we might not be here after Christmas. I guess we just got to get about the Lord's work and keep plowing ahead. Um, and I guess with that thought, I've got some idea I'm entertaining, and I'm not sure if it's a good or bad one. If you hang on toward the end of this video, I'll make a suggestion just to see if anybody is wanting to go with me on this plan. But um, I first wanted to do this as kind of a current events, current news video. And as I made the point in some prior videos, I think what we got to do is, be pretty well versed in the end time passages of the Bible and know where we are and know what the Bible says is to come. And then from there, look out into the news or into the environment or, the celestial stuff and say, how does that fit in or does it fit in? Um, yeah, I made the comment a lot of times where, like with the comet ice, and people were saying, you know, it's going to break into pieces, rain down on Earth, and so we must be at the brink of Revelation 8. And it's, to me, the wiring is just wrong. It's looking at the environmental things or the political things and trying to find something that would fit it in the Bible. And I think you get into trouble that way. And so this is a little current event thing. And what we're going to do is read the Bible passages and then look out and say, boy, could these things relate? And so that's kind of my wiring and how I'm thinking about stuff. And so let's go now, just to familiarize ourselves with this notion of the false prophet, because I think something continues to happen here, which, it astonishes me every time I see these reports come out. But let's talk about the false prophet for a minute here. Revelation 13, starting in verse 11. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he does great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men. And so um, here's kind of the thing I'm drilling down on this one is he's everybody I think is familiar with this idea, but he causes the earth, so everybody on the planet and all them that dwell therein, okay, everybody, to worship the first beast. And that's where we get the one world religion concept from. And down below, it talks about now you got to receive the mark of the beast and all that. And it's, from Satan, the 666 stuff comes in toward the end, but it's worldwide. It's forced worship, or at least it's, you're going to have to worship this first beast. And he can do this. The false prophet can call fire down from heaven on earth in the sight of men, deceive them that dwell on earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image of the beast which hath the wound of the sword and did live. So there's our false prophet, a little insight into it. Now let me go show you, what I caught in the news. That, again, I'm not saying this is it. I'm just saying here's some stuff that's going on that, um, at least should catch your radar at a minimum. And I'm not, if people have been with me for the last 9 months, I've been doing this YouTube channel. I'm not heavy and down on the Catholic faith. I came out of the Catholic faith, but I think it's time now to start talking about the fact that, one, it's probably one of the most likely faith systems to build that world worship off of, because it encompasses, a billion, 200 million people. Secondly, even within the Catholic faith, there was prophecy and prediction about an end time uh, either the Antichrist or the false prophet being from the Vatican. And I think since then, people have tied a whole bunch of deeds, very heinous deeds, from the Inquisitions all the way forward to, you know, what the Jesuits have been doing under the guise of the Vatican around the world for the last few hundred years. And so you can't ignore, kind of what's building on that front. I mean, the Islamic uh, faith and, the beheadings and all that's going on is so out there that everybody can see it. But, here you've got this notion of, you know, somebody that represents themselves in the Christian context, probably viewed as the leader of the Christian faith system, although many of us would deny that, putting himself out there, but then doing some concerning things. And so, in the past, we had an article where he was saying even atheists would be saved. And now the Pope came back and did something nearly as concerning. So this is just in WorldNet Daily. The headline is Pope Atheists Work with Us for Peace. Pope Francis, celebrating his first Christmas as a Roman Catholic leader on Wednesday, called on atheists to unite with believers of all religions to work for a homemade peace that can spread across the world. And so, boy, if that doesn't smack of what we just read in Revelation 13, and I'm not saying it's the fulfillment of Revelation 13, but if we know that one world religion has to be formed because the Bible tells us that in Revelation 13, you would have to see it being formed, would be an argument before it was put in place. And the basis of that, again, it's going to be a forced religion at some point, but the basis of that has got to be an ecumenical bringing together of all faith systems and even the atheists. I mean, that just seems logical, and that's exactly what you see going on here. So that was, this is how I think of things. You get familiar with the Bible and then look out in the environment and you say, wow, there's something to pay attention to. So let's go from there. And then the second thing that we saw in that passage was calling down fire from heaven and doing miracles. And now I think a lot of people are familiar with Tom Horn and Chris Putnam's work. They put out the book Exo-Vaticana, and they put out the book, about the last pope, the prophecy of the popes. And in both of them, they sort of tie together this notion of the Vatican is looking for an ET savior to come. And the astronomical work that they're doing on Mount Graham and the Lucifer device, which is infrared imaging that they tie to the telescope so they can see non-luminous things coming at the Earth, ETs and whatever else. Dig into that a little bit. You can see Tom Horn and Chris Putnam doing a lot of YouTube videos if you're not familiar with that. But so here you got the ecumenism going on, and now I'm going to show you a little bit of, this calling fire down from heaven. Just, might it be what we're about to see here? So hang on. So what that was, and again, how do you validate anything on YouTube? So take it with a grain of salt. But it's reported to be an alien attack in Fort Worth, Texas. Shocking report prepared by the Federal Space Agency for Prime Minister Putin states that one of the United States' most important space facilities, located in Fort Worth, Texas, was attacked this past week by alien forces intent on destroying Vimana, I don't know what that is, technology transported after its discovery by U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Um, so who knows? This is back, in 2011. So um, the point is, and whether this is what it claims to be or not, you could see things floating up in the sky if you watch closely, and then you clearly saw some craziness going on down at the ground, and supposedly these buildings were destroyed. Somebody else that had this same footage, a gentleman that claimed to have come out, I think he was military, claimed that when they went into Baghdad, the first thing they seized was the museum for the same purpose, as to get um, ancient, ancient alien or ancient space technology was the first thing they were getting when they went into Baghdad. Again, I can't justify it, but you start seeing so many of these little, you know, I don't know, data points that seem to fit the biblical story. And let's just go and take a look now at some more passages here. Here we're in Micah 5 now. I tried doing a Google, it's got that Google Hangout. Tried doing one of those Christmas Eve to do a little Christmas reading. I still got some stuff to learn on that, but it saved the video after it was done. Sorry, into my YouTube channel. And I went in to edit it. Usually I use Screencast. That's what I do all these with. But I went in to edit using the YouTube video editor, and I had 12 minutes on the front end where I was waiting for people to come into the chat room, and so I tried splicing the first 12 minutes off the video, and it seemed obvious enough, and it ended up splicing the last 12 minutes off the video. So I don't know what was going on there. It just seemed strange because it appeared obvious enough when I did the editing what I was doing, but when it posted it, I lopped off the back 12 minutes of the video, so I ended up taking that video down. If anybody wondered what happened there. Long story short, though, is I got into Micah because of what was prophesied by Micah in the 750 or so BC time frame. Now gather thyself in troops, O daughter of troops. He hath laid siege against us. They shall smite the judge of Israel with a rod upon the cheek. But thou, Bethlehem Ephrathah, I gotta learn how to say that. There'll be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me that is to be the ruler in Israel, whose going forth has been from old, from everlasting. Therefore he will give them up until that time that she which travail hath brought forth. Then the remnant of his brother shall return unto the children of Israel, and he shall stand and feed in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord, and they shall abide, for now shall he be great unto the ends of the earth. Okay, and this is obviously one of those Christmas passages you read because it's the prediction that Jesus would be born in Bethlehem. And so, of course, I read that. And the second thing we were noting in that video was that basically therefore he will give them up until the time that he hath which he that travail hath brought forth. Then the remnant of his brethren shall return unto the children of Israel. And so you see a little picture of that 1870 some odd year diaspora, and then you see the return here of the people into Israel, which again 1948 is sort of the mile marker that people point to for that. And so you get this end time cast then, and if even if you read the notes in your study Bible, they'll very likely say that what comes after is uh, picturing forward to the end times. The interesting thing is the Assyrians did come in and take the northern 10 tribes, or a good portion of the northern 10 tribes, out of Israel starting in 722 BC. But this, as we see, is an end time um, focused set of passages. And you get this really curious one here. And this man shall be the peace when the Assyrian shall come into our land, and when he shall tread in our palaces. And then shall we raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 principal men. And, uh, many people interpret this passage, including myself, as the Assyrian being the Antichrist, because this is the end times. And he does come into the palace, right? And we know that as he comes in actually to the temple and declares himself as God, midpoint of the tribulation. And so the Antichrist does have that behavior, yet he's called the Assyrian. And so that's curious. And a lot of people say, well, it could mean, um, the Assyrian could be harken back to Nimrod, and it gets confirmed here in the next verse. And they shall waste the land of Assyria with the sword, and the land of Nimrod in the entrances thereof. Thus shall he deliver us from the Assyrian when he comes into our land, and when he treadeth within our borders. And so many people see this as basically the final battle where Jesus comes back, and the Assyrian, or the Antichrist, is killed in the Battle of Armageddon, and all that. And so there now you get this strange notion of, you've got the Antichrist being linked to the original Nimrod uh, of the Bible right after the flood. And there's other passages, and if you've watched my videos, we go back and there's other passages that tie this notion of the Antichrist to Nimrod of the past. So that's not novel, and there's many people out there saying this. Rob Steve, forget how his last name, Skiba, Rob Skiba, I think was his name. He's out very public talking about that being the program. Chuck Missler talks about this being the program. The guy that wrote Red Moon Rising, I think, was the original one to tie this together based on ancient Sumerian writings of what they saw as the return of the original God-man. And that, of course, is in all pagan religions now. They're expecting the return of an ancient God-man, which Nimrod, presumably, that's what he was. The Bible talks about that in Genesis 6 as he became a Gabor. So that's where you get all that from. So let's go now take a look at Micah 6:5, just one other curious reference in Micah, and then we'll finish this up with one last article we're going to look at here. So, and 6 here is sort of God telling the Jewish people that, reminding them of in the days past, and he's declaring that the land of Israel is his witness to all these things that he did for the people of Israel. Okay, so that's the context of this. Is it is a new kind of a theme that God now is starting to talk about, witnessing to the Jewish people the transgressions that they had done against him, and that even the land of Israel witnesses against them. But we get down to verse 5 here, and you get, "O my people, remember now that Balak, king of Moab, consulted, and what Balaam the son of Beor answered him from Shittim unto Gilgal, that you may know the righteousness of the Lord." And if that's a direct hearkening back to Numbers 24. And people get a little frustrated. Some people have gotten real frustrated with me going back and actually not only looking at Numbers 24 in the King James, but then I pop over because there's some interesting additions if you look at the Septuagint version. And I'll just remind people that have that problem that um, of Jesus's quotes in the New Testament of Old Testament passages, he was quoting the Septuagint version of those passages. So I'm not trying to defend or say the Septuagint is any better. Matter of fact, it's parts of that book were lost and they've had to repatch it together. So it's definitely an inferior translation, but there's a couple of intriguing things that seem to be a little bit more clear in the Septuagint version than even in the King James. And so I'm not trying to make a big deal of this, but here we've got one of the witnesses against Israel, and one of the promises that um, God was making to the Israelites is that He even made this. I want to say this. Yeah, Balaam was a prophet, but he did it through demonic means until God actually gave him a prophecy then to give to Balak, one of the kings of Moab. And if you know, this is right when the Jews were coming toward the Holy Land. They hadn't yet crossed the river Jordan into the Holy Land, and they were about to meet all of the Nephilim kings in the land of Canaan, Balak being one of the kings of Moab. And then let's go take a look at this verse here in the Septuagint that I was talking about. So I'm not going to read this down, but here you see this is the fourth oracle. It's a end times oracle. Come, let me advise you what this people will do to your people at the end of days. And so this is really curious because here we've got that end time setting. And it talks about, and he shall crush the chiefs of Moab. Well, now we're in the end times, and so this isn't when the Israelites first crossed over the Jordan and slayed the Nephilim giants and the kingdoms of the Nephilim. This is end times, and yet Israel will rise up and crush the chiefs of Moab. So that's interesting. Plunder all of Seth's son. I've dug into that. That one's tough because Seth, you know, was the replacement, if you want to say, of Abel that got killed. And, you could almost say that everybody is a descendant of Seth. So I struggle with exactly what's that getting to there. Maybe this is part of the problem with the Septuagint translation. Maybe I'm trying to overread that. Edom will be an inheritance. Esau will be his enemy, will be an inheritance. And here's where you see, very likely maybe the Psalm 83, because these are now latter-day Palestinians. And Israel acted with strength, and that's what you get from the Psalm 83 war, is that the IDF wins these battles. And out of one shall arise Jacob, and he shall destroy one being saved from the city. And then here's the interesting part, I think. And when he saw Amalek, he took up this parable. Ruler of nations is Amalek, but their offspring will perish. Again, in the end times, you got offspring of Amalek perishing. And again, it takes a little bit of study. I'd suggest going to Wikipedia if you want. That there's two Amaleks. One was a descendant that apparently was just another tribe. Um, I don't think they were Israelite, but they were in the land of Canaan. But the earlier Amalek was thought to be one of these Nephilim kings, and the second Amalek that was in the Bible was probably namesaked after him. Is if you read up on it, that's what you get. And then you get the Kenites, which the Kenites I think were the ones that built the city in Petra, and you know I think there's something to it that ties it to the Edomites up above. Strong is your dwelling place, even if you set your nest in a rock. See, and even if your nest of cleverness accrues to Beor, Assyrians shall take you away captive. So here you get the Assyrians again, and then they saw Og. It took up this parable. Now Og is definitely a Nephilim king. He's described much better in the Old Testament as a Nephilim king, and the size of Og's bed being, I forget, it was 15 or 16 feet long. So here's where I get an end time setting, Nephilim kings back in the land of Israel. And it's curious because what we saw there in Micah was the Assyrian, Nimrod, and they pictured him going into the palaces in Israel. And here we see potentially the descendants of the Nephilim kings being there again in the end times. So it's kind of a long analysis, but hope you're following me in terms of how can you start going now from fire being called down from heaven, um, and then thinking about in the end times the Antichrist and the Nephilim kings being back on Earth. Well, again, this is Tom Horn, Chris Putnam's research mostly, but they claim that the Vatican is looking for this exact scenario, that they're looking for, what they're going to say is the Messiah coming from space, from the aliens, and that, there's been a suspected crossbreeding program with the aliens that's been documented, and that's exactly what the Nephilim were, is they were, half-breed uh, from the fallen angels and humans. So you start to see the tie, and again, we're doing it from scripture, looking out, saying, do we see any of this going on? And I granted now this is a little bit suspect, but it's just neat because it shows potentially fire falling down from heaven, burning up these military buildings in Fort Worth, Texas. And so, if any of you live in Fort Worth, if you can confirm whether some event like this did happen, that would really firm this up a little bit, because right now, I hold on to these things loosely. This could be bumpkiss, and I don't want to present it as fact, just as something that fits in the scenario that we're looking for from a biblical standpoint. And now to sort of wrap this whole thing up, and here's Veterans Today, and it's Military and Foreign Affairs Journal website. I don't know how credible this is. I've seen a couple of articles here, and I think even from this Preston James guy, columnist, he tends to go, uh, right off after these topics that many people have been speculating from the Bible. So I don't know about, Veterans Today in terms of being an accredited source for information, or this Preston James in particular, but he sure did line up things that seem to be consistent with what we're expecting if these passages we're reading in the Bible are correct. So what he was saying is that, everybody in the military and senior ranks know that there's a secret space war going on, and at the highest levels, the world governments are involved with this thing. And so you can read this article here. It's called Secret Space War, Marduk is Crowned in Africa. And what his argument is that, here you can see Barack Obama and the fake sign language guy down at Nelson Mandela's funeral. And his point was, how do you end up with 91 world leaders at the funeral for Nelson Mandela, and the strange things that occurred around that funeral? And he suggests this here. A very interesting rumor from a reputable source is that Mandela's funeral was used as a cover story to assemble the world's top leaders to pay homage to an ancient Nephilim alien ET leader called Marduk, and who was allegedly returned after hundreds of years of absence to be crowned the new king of Africa, perhaps later to be elevated to ruler of the New World Order, or the new Caesar of the ages, as the final third force plan for the globalist New World Order is revealed and actuated in full. If true, the Mandela funeral has perhaps provided great cover to assemble the world's top leaders to pay homage to Marduk, known as the crowned king of Africa, and as Mandela funeral became a major world event covered in detail on every major news network around the world, there was several strange anomalies during this surrounding the funeral that have become apparent and which can be interpreted in ways that support this rumor. And so, again, what can I do to validate Veterans Today or this guy's article? Don't know who his source is, but this sure is consistent because Marduk was the name given to the original God man worshipped in Neo-Babylon. Um, the Marduk and what they recovered, I think it was called the Ishtar Gate. I was trying to remember that from the Neo-Babylonian period. I think it sits in Berlin, um, with tiles that represent a lion with wings. And here you see a picture of Marduk. But that story goes back to the former Babylon. Marduk's one of the names for Nimrod. And so here we see potentially Nimrod, again, can I validate this? No, but Nimrod being made ruler of Africa, if this is true, eventually to be elevated to ruler of the New World Order. So it's just really caught me. And so don't know what to do with it. And we know that when the Antichrist rises, I think this is Daniel 8 or 7, maybe 7. He puts down, there's 10 world ruling sectors, and he puts down 3 of them on his rise up. He's the 11th little horn, if you want to go find that in the passages. And so the world's been divided. By the time he rises up, the world's been divided to 10 regions or sectors. And that's just what you see here too, as well as you got him being crowned as the king of Africa, and that's one of the sectors. So you notice that sovereign borders, if this would have been true, or if this is true, sovereign borders of all those countries of Africa being set aside, and now you've got a king of Africa, just like, there's presumably going to be a king of North America. So you see maybe the early footprints of the 10 world sectors coming into being. So, well, that's, it's been 32 minutes here. It's, again, it's taking a look at the Bible passages, trying to be familiar with what it says about the end times, and then saying what's going on out there politically or environmentally or whatever. Does it fit with the Bible? And now that we definitely are in the latter times, we should be able to see a lot of this. And so the proposal I'm going to make, and I don't know if anybody's interested, is maybe to do a Google Hangout or a Tiny Chat or something once a week and just have everybody kind of compare information, the Bible passages, what they're seeing in terms of news and events, and having a hangout. Now, I can bring some stuff and help facilitate that as well. I definitely proved that I'm a little shaky. When I did my first Google Plus Hangout, I didn't see people come in to chat, and yet there was people watching, which was, I couldn't figure out what I was supposed to be looking for on that. But it did save the video to the YouTube channel. And if I figure out a little bit better how to use the YouTube video editing tools, maybe there'll be like we could do a playlist of these and kind of watch over time as we document, the coming end times through that sort of a vehicle. So I'll throw that out there if you're interested in doing like a weekly end time Bible study / news type of thing. It'd be quite a bit different in my mind than like Paul Begley, who looks at any disaster around the world and talks about Bible prophecy, or it would be different than, like BP Earthwatch channel, who's looking for Earth events and astral events and trying to fit it into Bible prophecy. We would hopefully be starting from what to expect and read the passages of the Bible and then line up what we're seeing and put it in context of what the Bible says is going to happen. So that was the thought. and leave me notes down below if you're interested in any of that. And maybe I can practice with one or two of you until we get the hosting of those Google Plus Hangouts and the invitations and all that working better than what I was able to do on Christmas Eve. So with that, have a blessed day, and we'll, Lord willing, we'll see you on the next one.